For the next few lectures, we're going to be talking about invertebrates. And the first group of invertebrates I want to talk about are the mollusks, which are part of the large phylum known as Mollusca. So this is the largest group of water animals, and there are essentially four characteristics that separate these water animals from other water animals. And they would be, first of all, what's known as the foot. And we will talk about this some more, but this is a muscular appendage that every mollusk has that's responsible for the locomotion of the mollusk. In this diagram, for example, this is a univalve snail, and this represents the foot in which this creature walks along or moves along the bottom of the water body. Secondly is the visceral hump. The visceral hump is the area in the mollusk where the internal organs are contained. The third is the mantle. The mantle is a skin-like organ that covers the hump and produces calcium carbonate, and the calcium carbonate is essential for the shell of the mollusk. And fourth is the shell itself, and the shell of a mollusk functions to protect the mollusk. So the first group of mollusks we're going to talk about are the bivalves. And the bivalve, as the name suggests, means that they have two pieces or two parts to their shell. These are shellfish that are in many cases edible, things like clams and so forth, that we're all familiar with. The shell itself produces a substance called nacre, and nacre is stimulated or produced when something irritating enters the shell of the bivalve. This nacre builds up and forms what we recognize as the pearl. So if we look at this diagram over here, we have the mantle, and when the pearl, or when an irritation gets into this area, which is magnified here, then this part of the shell and mantle produces the nacre. The nacre then increases by layers until it produces what we call pearls. And I've actually, in China, I went to a place where they cultured these pearls. Culturing means to artificially instill sand or irritant into the shell in order to produce pearls. And this process is really quite interesting to watch. Now this is how a bivalve moves. The shell itself is held together by powerful adductor muscles. The term adductor, or to adduct something, means to move toward the midline. So if you take the midline of a person or of a shellfish and you move, say, your two legs in toward the middle of your body, toward the line that makes the middle, that's called adduction, ADD, adduction. Similarly, when the shell is moved together and closes, that's called adduction, and the muscles that do that are called adductor muscles. And this diagram shows you how the clam or bivalve moves. First of all, it pushes the foot into the sand. It then causes the foot to swell out and forms an anchor, and then the foot is then pulled in this direction, and when it pulls, the shell moves, and you can see that in this diagram. Now, how do these creatures eat and respire? Well, first of all, the mantle cavity is a chamber where the gills are located, and these are water animals that obtain oxygen through gills, and you can see right here are the gills, and there's a siphon called the incurrent and excurrent siphon. The incurrent siphon takes water in, the excurrent siphon takes water out. In the process of taking water in, oxygen is extracted from the water, and then it goes to the blood, and the blood is then circulated and just delivers oxygen throughout. Also, through this process, food is taken in, and the food is then collected in the mouth, which is right here, enters the stomach, is processed in the stomach, goes through the intestine, and as we all know, the intestine is quite important for absorption of food. This digestive gland produces the necessary enzymes that are needed for digestion of the food, and then it's expelled through the excurrent siphon. The heart circulates the blood. The circulation of the bivalve is open, which means that there are points in time when the blood is outside blood vessels. And so this is how the food is taken in and the oxygen is taken in and blood is circulated. And you can see here's the adductor muscles. They are attached here and here, and they hold the shell together when this clam or bivalve is alive. So the incurrent and excurrent siphon are responsible for taking the water in along with food and oxygen, and excurrent is removing. There's an open circulatory system, again, which means that the blood at times leaves the blood vessels and circulates throughout the body. And then when these shellfish reproduce, they reproduce by external fertilization. And so the spermatozoa are expelled externally, as are the eggs, and then the eggs are fertilized outside the body. Now the second group of mollusks are called gastropods, and gastropod means just what it says, gastro, stomach, pod, foot. And so what it's saying is that the foot is actually where the stomach is. So an example of gastropods are univalve shellfish, like this shell of a snail. So they have a single shell, and these single shells can have either a right-handed or a left-handed twist. Right-handed twist is called dextral twist. Left-handed twist is called a sinistral twist. Now another group of univalves are the slugs, and slugs are essentially gastropods without shells. The ones that are found in the ocean are called nudibranches, and this is a picture of a nudibranch, which is a actually quite attractive looking slug. I know we're used to seeing slugs around our house and stuff, and they look pretty nasty. These creatures are actually quite colorful. Now, the importance of these economically is that these can destroy water crops and act as parasites and destroy important, economically important agriculture. Now, this is a typical snail or single-shelled organism, and you can. I would recommend studying this diagram carefully, because this is one of those diagrams that I could put on a quiz or test. What you see here from the front is that the tentacle, these are not actually the tentacles. This is the tentacle. The eyes are actually on the end of two stalks, which improves the ability for this to see. The mouth is right here, and there's a very gravelly organ here called a radula, which is used to scrape material into the mouth. And this is one of the reasons you put a snail like this in your aquarium, because they go around the wall and the floor, and they essentially keep it clean because they scrape it loose with this radula, and then eat what they pull up. This goes into the crop. The crop is the storage area, and then moves along here to the stomach where it's processed, and then ultimately goes through and is absorbed in the intestine up here, and then this is the excretory part, and it's dispelled at this point. The brain is right here, so-called brain. I mean, it's really just a bundle of nerve cells, and the bundle of nerve cells is called a ganglia, and then the nervous system is very rudimentary. Here's the lung where the oxygen is extracted. The blood then goes to the heart. The heart pumps the blood around, and again, this also has an external or an open circulatory system. This is the foot where the locomotion occurs. And back here is the digestive gland, which produces the enzymes necessary for the digestion. And then this organ right in here is the kidney, which eliminates waste, which is then passed out of the body through the excretory pore. And so the operculum, which I don't actually see this on this diagram, but the operculum is the part of the snail which senses danger. It's not actually shown on this diagram. The tentacles, as you can see, are here. They are part of the feeling, and then these two branches, which are not really tentacles, but they're where the eyes are. And then I described the radula for you. It's a scraping-like organ that scrapes up food. Now the third group is called the cephalopod. Ceph being head, pod being foot, so head-footed mollusks. So this is an example of a cephalopod. An octopus is a cephalopod. This is not an octopus. This is a squid. And a squid and an octopus are different. Squids have 10 arms. Octopi have 8. Squids have 2 dominant arms and 8 smaller arms. Octopi have 8 arms that are essentially equal. And the squid has what's known as a siphon. And a siphon can take in water and then eject water in a particular direction. And this is how the squid moves through the water. Again, here it's very interesting because the squid has a closed circulatory system, so their blood remains within blood vessels. The octopus, as I said, have 8 arms. And then there's the more complex nautilus. A nautilus is like a squid, although it has obviously a different anatomy around its arms. But the interesting thing about the nautilus is the spiral of the shell. The spiral of the shell is a logarithmic spiral. And what that means is that it's the number of turns are according to a logarithmic equation. And this is actually an evidence for creation, the fact that these are so intricately designed.